thank everybody for coming out. It's great. We're going to get right into this, and we'll get you out of here. The Century Farm we're discussing this evening is 80 acres located in Buchanan Township, Section 14. Brush Creek cuts right through the middle of the farm. It lies east of the Salina Road and has never had any buildings on the land. Fritz, the son of Lawrance, purchased two 40-acre parcels, and they comprise our Century Farm. The first parcel was purchased on January 30, 1892, for $680. Boy, I wish I could buy land for that now. The second parcel was purchased on January 17, 1895, for $1,200. It was originally purchased to be used as pasture, but today I farm part of it, and then the rest of it is in CRP. It was then passed to my grandfather, Wade. There he is as a baby. And then he was an athlete in high school. This was a track uniform. He also played football. Always very proud to be a mechanic on airplanes in World War I. And he told me the story once of one of the pilots took him on a ride, and they flew under the bridge, which was pretty daring back then, I guess. So in this, I forget what city it was in, but that's where the airfield was. So to my father, Fred, this is him as a baby, a little older, kind of has rosy cheeks. I think that's a photography thing or something there. And then this is him as an adult. And someday it will trickle down the family line. I am the great-great-grandson of the original Flinspach, Lawrence, also known as Lawrence, and Caroline Schmetzer Flinspach, that immigrated from Germany to Jefferson County, Iowa. There are many descendants of this original couple scattered around the U.S. Some of them are here tonight. Marvin Larson, right? Where'd you go, Marvin? There he is. And Sharon Schaefer, there she is. Yeah, I'm going to get to that. Always the coach, right? Okay. These two helped very much with the visual aids tonight. Others, Jeff Kuntz and Doris Bonnet Strait. None of our current family ever really experienced life on the farm with no modern conveniences or attended country schools. I was the first year that we all came to the city instead of using the country schools, and that was 1960 for kindergarten. So we don't really have any humorous tidbits to share about that era of living. We are going to relate how our branch of the Flinspach clan got from Grossgartock, Württemberg, Germany, to Buchanan Township, Jefferson County, Iowa, and how this Century Farm came into the family. The history of the family has been researched thoroughly and can be traced back to the year 1571. And this is all documented here, but by a packet of research that Roy Bonnet, Doris's brother, and another descendant assembled following a trip my parents and Roy and Mary Kay made to Germany in 1997 for the purpose of unearthing family history. They were surprised to find that the church in town where the original couple came from could easily trace the family back to 1571. Relax, we are not going into all that ancient history now. My voice is only good for 20 minutes. In 1980, my dad interviewed Edith Larson, who is the granddaughter of the original couple and also the grandmother of Marvin and Sharon. She told the story of how the couple got to the U.S. It was not an easy transition. Edith, I got ahead of myself, was the grandmother of Marvin Larson, Sharon Schaefer, and Jean Miller, their sister. We're going to let Edith tell you that story now.
I'm Frederick M. Flinspach, and I'm at the Edith and Elmer Larson residence on a nice sunny April morning in 1980. The date is the 7th, and we are going to try to record just a little bit of the Flinspach family history.
In 1855, Lawrence and Carolyn Flinspach, who established this family, which we represent, came to Jefferson County, Iowa. Lawrence Flinspach was born August 5th, 1824, at Württemberg, Germany. He grew to manhood in his native land, laboring in his father's vineyard, and received a good education. He never ceased to study along with his other work, even to the time of his death. About 1849, he determined to come to America and spent some time at Cincinnati, Ohio, where he worked as a garden boss. Thinking to improve his health, he made a trip to New Orleans, and while there, worked in a sugar refinery for $9 per week. His health, instead of improving, was even poorer than before, so he returned to the north, and after spending some 3 years in all in the New World, returned to Germany. Then again in 1855, he came across the Atlantic, this time locating in Buchanan Township, Jefferson County, Iowa, on the farm now occupied by Julius Dearson family. Carolyn Schmitzer, born May 26, 1834, was also born at Württemberg, Germany, and also came to America in 1855. She had worked as a servant girl in the Flinspach household. Both came by sailboat, but not the same one. She spent 63 days on the water, sometimes making slow headway and sometimes drifting back, depending on the direction of the wind. She said she never knew when summer came. That year it was so cool on the water. Her people being of limited circumstances, she was forced to earn all the money to pay for her passage. She landed in Quebec, Canada, came to New York, where she worked for an exchange banker as domestic help to earn and save enough money to bring her the rest of the way. This consumed almost a year's time. Lawrence almost despaired, thinking she was lost at sea. He hadn't heard from her for so long. From New York, she came by train to Burlington, and from there to Fairfield by stage. From Fairfield, she walked in a northeasterly direction, inquiring as she went. When she came to the Stoner home, where the Stoners still live, she found they could speak German, and they directed her the rest of the way. The next day, April 14, 1856, they came to Fairfield and were married. They were the only members of their respective families who sought homes on this side of the Atlantic, so far as we know. By the untiring efforts of the husband, supplemented by the counsel and assistance of his good wife, their financial resources were increased, and they were able to provide a good home for the 14 children which came to bless it. These children were Mary Christina, who married John Cann, George, who died at 4 years old, Hannah Elizabeth, whose married name was Mrs. Thomas Thompson. My father, Martin Christopher, married Iowa Donner. He was named for his grandfather. And from the time of our grandparents' marriage until Martin's birth, there had been no communication between Lawrence and his people, since they were displeased with him for having married a girl which they considered below him in station. At this time, grandfather wrote of a birth of a son named for his grandfather, and received a letter in return containing their blessing and a $10 gold piece for the baby. That original German gold piece, a symbol of blessing and good wishes, has been passed from generation to generation and is now in the possession of Roy Larson, Martin's oldest grandson. The fifth member of the family was Fritz Lawrence, who married Jenny Gilbert. Next in line was Anna Frederica, who married John Deers, Lucy Sophia, who was the next daughter, and she married Alec Gordon. Jacob Wilhelm was the next son, and he also was called away early in life at the age of 5 years. Both of these little boys died of diphtheria. Albert Henry, the next son, lived to be a young man and died of pneumonia when he lacked 12 days of being 25 years old. The next child, a daughter, Minnie Julia, who married Preston Gordon. A son, Gustav Adolphus, came next. He was named for the King of Sweden and married Bertha Cook. Edward Christian, whose wife is Anna Gilbert, and Frank Theodore, who married Emma Stortz. Robert Carl, who married Grace Hyde, was the baby of the family. He was not quite 5 months old when his father passed away, September 5th, 1879, from the still dread disease of cancer. After grandfather's death, grandmother stayed with the children, who were all at home except Mary, the oldest, who had married. Grandmother kept the home together very successfully with the help of the older children. She was both father and mother to them all. In 1906, the old home was sold and the younger boys established homes of their own, and grandmother moved to the home of her son Martin, where she passed away January 10th, 1908. Our grandmother's parents were of the Lutheran faith and were faithful members for their lifetime. Then our first reunion, which was known as such, was held September 1916 at the John Cann home, but the first one I remember was held on grandmother's birthday. She had planned and prepared the dinner with the help of the girl who regularly helped her, but alas, she had worked so hard when the day came she was sick abed. I suppose only one member here remembers grandfather Flinspach, but many of us remember grandmother and her kindly, loving ways. I, for one, will never forget the huge sacks of candy at Christmas time and the beautiful Easter eggs which were always provided for the pleasure of the children and grandchildren, as well as the many, many pleasant memories centered around the home. A correction. In checking records, we find that Albert lacked 12 days of being 24 years old instead of 25 at his death.
Edith, in thinking back over the history you just read, I'm interested in knowing just exactly where the Flinspach, Lawrence Flinspach came from in Germany.
I've heard him tell the address many times, and I'll spell the first because I don't know how to pronounce it. Grosgartach, Heilbrunn, Halbrun, Württemberg, Wurtemberg, Germany.
Okay. Edith, I understand that my forebear had a couple trunks, and I think maybe they have an interesting story. I'll just let you kind of tell about it.
The chests or trunks that came across the ocean with my grandfather and grandmother were at our house since my grandmother lived the last years of her life at our house. And they were wooden chests, iron bound, and were about 5 feet long and 2 feet high and 2.5 feet wide. Across the one that Lawrence brought was his name painted on with black paint, and his name was spelled Lawrence, capital Flinchbaughh. And when he came to America, he thought he should change the spelling from German to English, and he spelled it Flinspach. These chests are now in the possession of our 2 oldest granddaughters, Sharon Schaefer, or Mrs. Dean Schaefer of near Merrimack, and Jean Miller in Winfield.
Edith, I'm quite interested in the contents of this chest. As I understand, it was a little bit mysterious, and so I'll let you tell a little on this.
Well, it contained books which he used in his study, and as near as I know, it was of a medical nature. And I have seen 1 or 2 of these books, and they contained formulas which I did not understand.
I am interested, Edith, in what Lawrence did for a living.
His chief interest was in vineyards, and he had a large vineyard at the farm which they moved to when my father was about 4 years old, and it's about a mile west of where they went to housekeeping, and about a half a mile north of where our son Roy lives. And
This is owned by someone?
This is owned by people by the name of Miller, I think.
Okay.
And in the fall of the year, about the 26th of September, my grandmother's birthday, they would harvest the grapes. And I've heard my father say that he would have a new pair of rubber boots and he would tramp grapes for a solid week, getting them ready for the wine press. When they were ready to press, they were pressed and placed in barrels in a wine cellar, which is still in existence at the farm they lived on. My father said that when the wine was fermenting, the fumes were so strong that they would kill a mouse. After the wine was fermented, they added loaf sugar and raisins, and it was marketed to various companies over the Middle West. My grandfather also owned property in Omaha, and it was planted to vineyard. And in the spring of the year, my father was old enough to go out and prune the vines, and he advised his wife at his death never to sell this property, but it was a burden to her, and she sold it, but it is now in the heart of Omaha.
I was interested, Edith, do you have or someone in the family have the original recipe for this wine?
No.
I don't have it either.
It's never been kept.
It would seem that Lawrance would be of age that he could go to the Civil War and fight. Did he do so?
No, he was drafted, but at that time they could hire someone to go in their place, and he hired a substitute to go in his place, so he never entered the army.
Edith, we kind of been talking and compiling a list of the first cousins. Can you give those to me now?
Yes, I can tell you that of the Aunt Mary Cann's family, there are still Edward and Harry and Ralph. And from Aunt Hannah Thompson's family, there is Bertha Mangold. And I am the only one left in my family. And from Uncle Fred's family, there's Eileen Flinspach. And from Uncle Ed Flinspach's family, there's Charlie. And from Uncle Frank Flinspach's family, there's Mildred Bonnet. And from Uncle Rob's family, there is Angela McCleary and Bernice Hickenbottom. 10 in all.
Okay.
And many fourth and fifth generation descendants.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Edith, for giving us a rather complete and extensive history on the Flinspach family. I'm sure this is going to be very interesting to a good many future descendants of our family.
I've enjoyed, it's brought back many memories going back over the history, and we have reason to be proud of our ancestors and much to live up to.
That was 1980. I believe all those cousins she mentioned are passed on by now. Edith mentioned Julius Deers lived on the original farm. Since the recording was made, Larry and Terry Deers moved to that location, and Terry still resides there. Marvin Larson is the caretaker of the $10 coin, sent as a sign that Lawrence had been forgiven for marrying below his station. I don't know about this, going after the maid, I don't know. Anyhow, in researching information for this program, Sharon and I roamed around Evergreen Cemetery looking for graves of the 14 children who were the first generation to be born in the U.S. We were able to either find the actual grave or a photo of the grave for each of the children. Many current Jefferson County residents would recognize these ancestors as belonging to them. And once again, I'm going to quickly go through the chronological order of the children, chronological by birth. Mary Christina, who married John Cann. John George, who was almost 5 when he died. Hannah Elizabeth, who married Thomas Thompson. Martin Christopher, who married Mary Iowa Dahlner, and she went by Iowa Flinspach. There's 3 photos there. And Marvin Larson and Sharon Schaefer, who are here tonight, are descendants from Martin's family. Fritz Lorenz, my great-grandfather, who married Clorinda Jane Gilbert, who went by Jenny, and most of you know our oldest daughter's name is Jenny, and you even spell it the same. Anna Fredrika, who married John Deers. Too bad it wasn't John Deere, but that's it. You got to work with what you got. Lucy Sophia, who married Alex Gordon. Jacob Wilhelm, who was almost 5 when he died. Albert Henry, who died at age 23 and never married. Minnie Julia, who married Preston Gordon. Gustav Adolf, who married Bertha Coop. Edward Christian, who married Anna Gilbert. Frank Theodore, who married Emma Stortz, and their descendants are Roy Bonnet and Doris Bonnet Strait. And Robert Carl, who died in a tragic farm accident, was married to Grace Hyde. The original Flinspach, Lorenz, died of cancer here in Jefferson County. 2 of his sons drove a team of mules to Burlington to get a large granite tombstone, which marks the graves of Lorenz and Carolyn Schmetzer Flinspach, located in Upper Richwood Cemetery. And I find that interesting because that cemetery is right by Marvin's house, and for years I've driven right by it to go farm the farm in Salina and never knew that's where they were. It's just kind of blows your mind. As you heard Edith say, the children of Lorenz and Carolyn Flinspach married into families such as the Canns, the Thompsons, the Dahlners, the Gilberts, the Deers, Gordons, Coops, Storts, and Hydes. Their offspring have in turn married into numerous other families. You learn to be careful what you say about anyone, as you could easily be speaking about a relative. Of the original 14 children, 9 were males who had many children. Yet I am the only male descending from the original couple, why do I always do that? Couple who has children. Sharon and I have only daughters, so to paraphrase the sign on Harry Truman's desk, the name stops here. That's what I have prepared. If anybody dares to ask any questions, I'll muddle through it. Did we make the deadline, Dave? Yeah, Marvin or Sharon or Doris, do you guys want to say anything about what you remember of Edith? Or who now? Rob. Okay. And his wife. Yeah. And do you know what age they were then? Or? No, it's in the paper. Okay. Well, it's probably in the cemetery. Yeah, Rob. There it is. And Uncle Ray was the one who's children. Uncle Ray was, okay. And I can elaborate on that if you like gory details. He was, which one is Uncle Ray? Yeah, I didn't quite get. He was Grandma's brother. Okay. Mark? No. Okay. Anyhow, he was plowing with a tractor, and you can imagine, if you've ever been to old threshers, the tractors don't move very fast back then. Like if it was doing 1 mile an hour plowing, it was probably doing good. And the plow plugged up. And being a little bit stupid about it, he went back, left the tractor moving, and tried to kick the plug out of the plow, and he got caught in the thing and was dragged the whole length of the field. The tractor ended up dying in the ditch finally, and that's where they found him. So us farmers, we haven't learned a lot yet. We still do stupid things, but it started real early. So. Doris, do you have any tales to tell?
Well, I was thinking that my father was the one that found me first.
Okay.
Roy was telling me. Roy's the one that's got all the information.
Yeah, he's sharp. Roy lives in Detroit, worked for Ford Motor Company. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. I gave him his bidding. I probably left somebody out. This is not perfect, but we kind of wanted to go down this route instead of talk about the farm, because the farm's a little bit boring, really. I mean, it just no buildings. We just used it for pasture, and then we decided to plow up the bottoms, which is a whole 17 acres. And then there's about 35 to 40 acres in CRP. So that's pretty much the whole story of the farm. That's my dad, Frederick. Yeah. Well, he said it right at the beginning of the thing, and yeah, that's like listening to a ghost. That is a little creepy. Yeah, it is. It's wonderful. It's creepy in a wonderful way. How's that? Anybody else? Go ahead, close the shop up. Thank you very much for coming, and it worked good.
I think that your relatives way back would be proud of you, Jim, and your family. And seriously, I mean, what farmer is more dedicated to the farm and the story and Farm Bureau? And I think Martha and Fred did a great job with you. You had a great wife, you had great kids, and I think Jim deserves a round of applause for